Hi guys, tonight we slip into a world where the air is a solid thing you chew, not breathe. It is a broth of river fog, coal tar, and the slow decay of a million wooden beams pressed together for too long. The light when it comes is the colour of a day-old bruise, seeping through a ceiling of perpetual smoke and damp. You're about to become a resident of a Victorian slum in the year 1870, and you already know you probably will not survive this in real life, not without a set of lungs lined with leather and a spirit that has learned to fold itself into very small, very quiet spaces. So before you get comfortable, if these journeys to the raw edges of human history help you appreciate your own quiet corner of the world, consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Your support allows me to rebuild these forgotten places brick by sensory brick for you to explore. And as always, feel free to tell me your location and the time where you are listening from. It is a small wonder to think of this story weaving its way from this grimy past into your present moment, wherever you are. Now, dim the lights. Let the sounds of your own room, the hum of a device, the distant traffic, fade into a low, distant murmur. We are leaving that world behind. We are descending now into a different kind of silence, the silence of a place too crowded to ever be truly quiet. The darkness you awaken into is absolute. It is a black so complete it has weight and pressure against your closed eyelids. You do not wake from a dream, but from one form of nothingness into another. The first sense to report for duty is not sight, but smell. It arrives in distinct, overwhelming layers. The foundational note is damp, a cold mineral smell of brick and earth that has not been dry in 100 years. Upon this is a pungent, greasy layer of old cooking fat and rancid meat. Cutting through that is the sharp, eye-watering sting of ammonia from the communal bucket in the corner. And over it all, binding it together, is the sweet, cloying and unmistakable scent of human waste and unwashed bodies. A smell so thick it feels like a woolen blanket pressed to your face. This is the air. This is what you will breathe today. Your body announces itself next, not as a whole, but as a collection of complaints. A sharp ache blooms deep in the small of your back, the legacy of the rope lattice you lie upon. It is not a bed, but a shared framework of coarse sacking stretched over knotted cords, rented by the night. This rope hospitality was the final frontier of cheap lodging, a fact of life for those with only a handful of coppers to their name. To your left, a man's body is a furnace of heat and movement, his elbow pressing into your ribs with each ragged breath. To your right, another sleeper turns, muttering a stream of slurred, anxious words that dissolve back into a guttural snore. You're not an individual here. You're a unit of occupancy, a warm body filling a paid-for segment of darkness. Sound begins to crystallize out of the blackness. It is not one sound, but a symphony of distress. The man to your left does not snore. He coughs. It is a deep, wet, rattling convulsion that starts in his boots and shakes his entire frame, sending vibrations through the shared ropes. Somewhere closer to the door, a baby wails, a thin, piercing sound of pure misery that rises and falls but never quite stops. Underneath it all is a constant, skittering rustle, the sound of rats, bold and plentiful, moving through the walls and across the floor as if they own the place, which, in many ways, they do. And beneath even that, a soft, rhythmic asterisk, plink, plink, plink asterisk of water dripping from a leak in the low ceiling onto a tin plate placed on the floor. This is the room's heartbeat. You move slowly, with an economy of motion born of conserving warmth and avoiding contact. Your clothes are a pile on the floor beside your rented space. You sit up, the ropes groaning in protest, and feel for them. The linen of the shirt is stiff, crusted with yesterday's sweat and grime. It smells of you, of smoke, of this room. You pull it on, the rough fabric scraping against your skin. The trousers are damp at the cuffs. Your boots are nearby. You slide your feet into them, not bothering to lace them fully. The leather is cold and cracked. standing as a careful operation in the pitch dark. You know the dimensions of this cellar by bruised shins and stooped shoulders. Your head clears the blackened ceiling beams by less than an inch. You step over the forms of other sleepers, their outlines just slightly darker pools in the absolute gloom, and feel for the ladder that serves as stairs. The common room upstairs is a haze of moving shadows cast by a single, foul-smelling tallow lamp. The air here is warmer but thicker, saturated with smoke and the smell of boiling cabbage and unwashed wool. A handful of men are already hunched on benches, passing a clay pipe in silence. A woman rocks a fretful child by the feeble hearth, where a few lumps of cheap coal struggle to produce more smoke than flame. No one makes eye contact. The windows are opaque with grease and soot, but a faint, dirty greyness behind them signals the world outside is beginning to stir. You push open the heavy door, and the cold of the alley hits you like a physical blow. For a single shocking second, it is cleaner than the air inside. Then your nose fills with the alley's own perfume, the smell of wet stone, rotting vegetable matter, and something faintly sickly sweet from the gutter. The sky above is a narrow ribbon of lead grey, pinned between the sagging rooftops of two leaning buildings. The day has claimed you. Your first mission, shared by every soul in this warren, is not for work or wealth, but for the two most basic elements, water and a mouthful of food. The fight for survival begins not with a bang, but with a slow, shuffling trudge towards the communal pump, your empty stomach a tight, cold fist inside you. The shuffle towards the pump is less a walk and more a communal drift, a slow current of bodies moving through the stone gullet of the alley. You're not alone. Doors open, and more figures spill out, joining the flow, men with hollow eyes, women with shawls pulled tight over hair that hasn't seen clean water in weeks, children whose faces are already set in lines of pinched endurance. No one speaks. The energy for morning greetings does not exist here. The only sound is the slap of worn leather on wet stone, the occasional cough that echoes off the closed walls, and the distant metallic shriek you are all moving toward. The air grows colder, damper as you approach the shared yard that houses the pump. You can already see the crowd, a dark, shifting knot of humanity gathered around the iron handle. The yard itself is a morass of churned mud and refuse, the ground having long ago surrendered to the constant traffic and spillage. The queue is not a line, but a tense organic thing, a semicircle of bodies pressing inward. There is no official order, only an unspoken, fragile understanding enforced by weary glares and the occasional sharp elbow. You find a place at its periphery, feeling the pressure of bodies behind you. The pump stands as a rusted idol in the centre, its green paint flaked away to reveal bleeding sores of orange iron. A woman is working the handle now, her entire body leaning into each downward pull. For a few strokes, nothing happens. Then, with a deep bronchial gurgle from underground, a thin brownish stream sputters into her bucket. It is not clear. It carries within it the colour of the earth, of old pipes, of things you don't want to name. She looks at it, her lips pressed into a thin line of resignation, and fills her pot anyway. Clean water was a theory here, an abstraction discussed in distant newspaper articles about cholera. The reality was this, a liquid that was wet, and that was all you could afford to ask for. You watch a small, grimy boy, unattended, cup his hands under the dribble from the pump spout and drink eagerly, the water dark against his palms. No one stops him. Thirst is a more immediate master than fear. When your turn finally comes, the iron handle is shockingly cold, its surface gritty with rust and frost. You grip it, the metal biting into your already calloused palms. You pull. It resists with a shudder, then gives with a screech that travels up your arms and sets your teeth on edge. You work it up and down, a monotonous, muscle-burning piston. For what feels like minutes, only air and a deep rattling protest come from the spout. Then the water comes. It is not a gush, but a reluctant erratic trickle, the colour of weak tea. It smells distinctly of metal and of something else, something damp and organic like the root cellar of a forgotten house. You hold your small dented tin pail underneath until it is half full, You do not let it fill further. To take more than your share is to invite conflict from those waiting behind. You step back, the weight of the water a sudden precious anchor in your hand. You look into the pail, particles swirl and settle in the murk. You raise it to your lips and drink. The water is frigid, numbing your lips and tongue, and it tastes overwhelmingly of iron and soil. It does not quench your thirst so much as announce its presence, cold and foreign in your gut. But it is wet. It is a fact. You pour a little into your cupped hand and splash it over your face. The cold is a brutal, clarifying shock, scraping away the last cobwebs of the cellar's sleep. The hollow ache in your stomach, momentarily silenced by the shock of the water, now returns with a sharper, more insistent pang. The next ritual awaits, the search for breakfast. You leave the yard, the tin pail now await at your side, and move back into the alleyways where a different kind of commerce is stirring. Here, the air is pierced by sharper smells, the acrid smoke of cheap coal from braziers, the dubious scent of frying fat that has been used and reused for days. You follow the smell to a corner where a man with a face as greasy as his trade stands over a sizzling pan. What he is frying is ambiguous. The lumps are a pale, mottled grey-brown, sizzling in a film of fat that has gone dark. They could be offal, they could be potato mixed with sawdust, they could be something else entirely. In a world where inspectors rarely ventured, food adulteration was not a crime, it was a business model. You fish a single worn penny from the depths of a pocket. The exchange is wordless. He takes the coin, bites it briefly with a stained tooth to test it, a common enough practice, and uses a piece of old newspaper to scoop a steaming slab from the pan into your waiting hands. The heat is the first, the only luxury. It burns through the newspaper and into your frozen palms, a pain so welcome it borders on pleasure. You bring it to your mouth, blowing on it, and take a careful bite. The exterior is a tough, greasy shell. The inside is soft, hot, and almost flavourless, save for an overwhelming saltiness and the pervasive taste of the old fat. It is not good, but it is hot and it is solid, and as you chew slowly, making it last, a wave of simple animal satisfaction spreads from your stomach outward. For these few minutes you're not hungry. As you eat, leaning against a damp wall, you see a small girl, her dress a collection of rags, staring at you from across the alley. Her eyes are fixed on the food in your hands. You break off a small greasy corner and hold it out. She does not smile, does not thank you. She darts forward, snatches it from your fingers and is gone, vanishing into a doorway, the prize already at her mouth. Your own meal now feels smaller, but the act of sharing, however tiny, has left a different kind of warmth in its place. The transaction is complete. You've traded a penny for a few minutes of respite from hunger and cold. The ledger of the day is still deeply in the red, but the first, most basic entries have been made. The pump has been worked. The stomach has been quieted, however falsely. The grey light has strengthened from a seep to a steady, dull glow. The true work of the day, the long, uncertain search for the coin that will buy tonight's rope and tomorrow's fried slab, now begins. You set the empty newspaper down on a pile of other rubbish, wipe your greasy hands on your trousers, and turn your face away from the relative safety of the familiar alley. You must now venture toward the wider streets, toward the docks and the factories and the markets, where the city's hungry machine might, if you're very lucky, have a use for you. The shuffle becomes a walk, the walk a trudge, your boots finding a familiar weary rhythm on the cobbles. The slum is waking up in earnest now, and you are part of its grim, determined pulse. The walk out of the warren is a journey through layers of sound and smell. The narrow, choked alleys give way to slightly broader lanes, then to streets where carts can barely pass. The air changes too. The dense organic stench of the slum's core, the human and animal waste, the rotting food, begins to blend with, then be overtaken by other industrial odours. The sour tang of the tannery by the creek, the sulphurous belch of a brewery's chimney, the dry mineral dust of coal shaken from the 100 sacks and carts. The noise grows from a murmur to a roar. Cobbles rumble under iron-rimmed wheels. Horses snort and stamp. 1,000 different voices shout, haggle, curse and cry. You move through this river of sensation like a stone, your own silence a hard shell against the chaos. Your destination is not a place, but a possibility. You join a cluster of men already gathered on a damp corner near the entrance to the West India docks. They're a ragged regiment, leaning against walls or sitting on the curb, their eyes fixed on the gate where the foreman will appear. This is the daily lottery of the casual poor, the docker's call. There is no contract, no promise. Only the chance that your face, your build, will be the one picked from the crowd for a day's back-breaking labour unloading tea or sugar or timber. You find a space against a cold brick wall and settle into the wait. It is a special kind of work, this waiting. It consumes hope by the minute, turning it into a heavy residue of boredom and dread in your gut. You watch the faces around you, the young men with a flicker of anxious energy, the older men, their faces carved with permanent disappointment, who know the odds. Someone passes a bottle. It is not ale, but cheap fiery gin, a morning fuel for the desperate. The smell of it cuts through the damp air. You decline with a shake of your head. You need your wits, such as they are. An hour passes, the grey sky lightens imperceptibly. The foreman does not come. Rumours ripple through the crowd. They're taking only 20 today. The asterisk perseverance asterisk is in, full of mahogany. Foreman's in a foul mood. The information is worthless, but it is traded like gold. It gives the waiting a shape, a narrative. Your feet grow cold and numb on the stones. You shift your weight, your shoulders aching already from the mere anticipation of labour. Finally, the gate groans open. Not the foreman, but a clerk with a clipboard steps out. He doesn't even look at the crowd. He calls out a name, a single name, of a man who is known, who is owed a favour. The chosen man steps forward, a ghost of a smile on his face, and slips inside. The gate clangs shut. A collective sigh, a release of held breath, passes through the 50 men left behind. It is a sound of profound emptiness. The lottery for today is over. You've not even been seen. You push off from the wall. The burn of rejection is familiar, almost comfortable in its predictability. Plan B is always the same. The warren of small workshops and slop shops in the maze behind the commercial streets. Here the work is not heavy, but it is fine, tedious and toxic. You find yourself outside a door with a faded sign for a matchbox factory. The smell hits you before you enter, a sweet, cloying chemical scent that lodges in the back of the throat. Phosphorus. Inside, the light is dim, the air a visible haze of dust. Women and children, their faces pale and spectral, sit at long tables. Their fingers move in a blinding, repetitive blur, dipping tiny splints of wood into trays of the poisonous compound, laying them out to dry. No one speaks. The only sounds are the click of wood, the soft slap of the dips, and a constant low-level coughing. A forewoman with a sharp face looks you up and down. "Too big for the benches," she says, her voice rasping. "Can you lift crates?" She points to a stack of wooden boxes filled with finished matches. The pay is a pittance, less than the docks would have been, but it is a pittance in your hand, not a possibility in the air. You nod. The work is simple. Move the crates from the packing table to the loading door 20 feet away. The first crate is deceptively light. The 10th is an agony. The phosphorus dust coats your hands, your sleeves, the inside of your nose. It has a peculiar, faintly luminous quality in the gloom. You know, everyone here knows that this dust eats bone, that the women at the table sometimes develop phossy jaw, a rotting of the face. But knowing is an abstract thing. The copper coins at the end of the day are not. You lift, you carry, you set down. Lift, carry, set down. Your world narrows to the wooden grain of the crate, the counting of steps, the dull protest in your lower back. Time is measured in crates stacked. The women at the tables never look up. The world is the size of a splint. Yours is the distance between two doors. After 3 hours, the forewoman presses 2 pennies into your palm. Your fingers are stained yellow. The sweet smell is in your hair, your clothes, your lungs. You stumble back out into the alley, blinking in the comparatively clean grey light. The coins are warm in your hand. You've traded a portion of your future health for the certainty of tonight's lodging. It feels less like a trade and more like a slow, inevitable seepage. With the grim security of the pennies in your pocket, your pace changes. You're no longer a seeker but a transient observer. You drift through the midday streets, a spectator in the vast theatre of poverty. You pass a piggery, a sweatshop for cheap clothing, where the rhythmic thump of 100 sewing machines creates a vibrating hum you feel through the soles of your boots. Through an open door you see rows of girls, their heads bowed over the frantic needles, their fingers guiding fabric in a dangerous blur. The air smells of ozone from the machines and the oily scent of the cloth. You move on. In a narrow court, children swarm over a mountain of refuse, a dust heap, picking out bits of coal, bone, metal, anything with a sliver of value. Their shouts are sharp and excited, a game of survival. You see a man being quietly, efficiently relieved of his pocket watch by two boys in a doorway. Their hands are so fast they seem to barely touch him. He walks on, unaware. This is not grand crime, but the daily friction of need. You pause by a street corner preacher, a man with a wild beard and fiercer eyes who shouts about hellfire and redemption to a crowd of bored and listless listeners. His words are grand, apocalyptic, but they bounce off the grimy brick and the hungry faces. Salvation is a concept for tomorrow. A full stomach is a concept for right now. Further on, a cheap tavern spills its noise onto the street. The tinny bang of a piano, a roar of laughter, the clatter of pewter pots. The smell of stale beer and boiled meat is a siren call to spend your pennies, to trade an hour's numbness for an evening's deeper hunger. You clench your fist around the coins in your pocket and walk past. The calculus is too precise, too brutal. Your wanderings take you to the edges of the slum, where it bleeds into slightly less desperate neighbourhoods. Here, you see the other side of the equation. The pawnbroker's 3 brass balls signifying a graveyard of lost possessions. The grim-faced officials of the Poor Law Union office, where a queue of women and elderly men wait for the scant, shameful relief. A charity soup kitchen run by earnest, overwhelmed ladies from a church. Their faces masks of pity and faint disgust as they ladle thin broth into outstretched bowls. These are the institutions that manage poverty, that corral it, document it, and dispense just enough to prevent riot, but never enough to foster change. You observe it all from across the street, a part of it yet separate. Your 2 pennies a tiny island of agency in this sea of systemic despair. The light is beginning to fade, the grey taking on a colder blue tint. The theatrical spectacle of the day is winding down. It is time to turn your steps back toward the only place that passes for home, your body a catalogue of the day's toll. The cold numbness of the wait, the chemical burn in your throat from the matchworks, the ache in your back from the crates, the hollow echoing fatigue from simply witnessing it all. The walk back into the heart of the warren feels longer, heavier, as if the gathering gloom has physical weight, pressing you back down into the earth from which you briefly crawled. The walk back is a journey inward, a slow retreat from the vast, noisy theatre of the city's struggle into the tighter, more intimate drama of the alleyway. The blue-grey dusk acts like a muffler, softening the sharper edges of sound. The cartwheels seem to rumble more softly, the shouts from tavern doors are blunted, absorbed by the rising damp. Your own footsteps, however, grow louder in your ears, a steady, tired rhythm on the cobbles that marks the closing distance to the only place you can claim any rest. The smells change too, shifting from the industrial and commercial to the domestic and desperate. The sharp reek of the tannery fades, replaced by the smoke from 1,000 poor hearths, a smoke that smells of damp coal, of burning rubbish, of whatever wood could be scavenged. It is a homely smell, if home is a place of perpetual scarcity. You push open the door to your lodging house, and the wave of heat and smell is almost welcoming in its familiarity. It is the same foul air, but it is asterisk your asterisk foul air. The common room is more crowded now, alive with the muted industry of evening. The fire in the grate is stronger, fed by the day's meagre collections of fuel. Its light is the centre of the universe here, painting the worn faces of your fellow residents in flickering ochre and deep shadow. You see the woman from the morning, her child now asleep in her lap, its face peaceful for the first time all day. The men who argued over debt are now sharing a pipe, the tension replaced by a weary, silent camaraderie. You find a space on a bench, your body sinking onto the wood with a gratitude that is purely physical. The rituals of possession begin. You take the 2 pennies from your matchbox labour and the single greasy penny left from the morning, and you hold them in your closed fist. This is your accounting. 3 pennies, 1 for the night's rent on your length of rope, 1 for a scant supper, 1 to keep, a tiny bulwark against the absolute zero of having nothing. You pay the lodging house keeper, a grim man with a ledger, his fingers stained with ink. He takes the coin, makes a mark, and says nothing. The transaction is the most important relationship you have. With the 2nd penny, you buy food. Not from a street seller, but from a collective pot simmering at the edge of the hearth. A watery stew of potatoes, turnip tops, and a few scraps of fat back, contributed to by several residents. You receive a bowlful, along with a chunk of the hard, dark bread that is the backbone of every meal here. You take it to your corner. The first spoonful is so hot it scalds your tongue, but you don't care. The flavour is of salt and onion and smoke, and it is, in this moment, magnificent. You eat slowly, methodically, dipping the bread to soften it, savouring each mouthful. The simple act of consuming hot food transforms the space around you. The room feels less like a pit and more like a refuge. The shared meal, the collective warmth, creates a fragile, wordless bond. For these few minutes, you're not fighting the world alone. You're one of many, drawing warmth from the same fire, eating from the same great pour pot. It is not happiness, but it is a cessation of war. After the bowl is clean, licked as discreetly as possible, the 3rd penny feels heavy in your pocket. It is a seed of tomorrow. You take out the 1 piece of clothing that must last, your coat, and examine it by the firelight. The seam is coming apart at the shoulder. You find a needle kept with a few lengths of thread in a twist of paper, and you begin to mend it. The work is finicky in the low light. You push the needle through the thick wool, pull the thread tight again and again. The repetitive focused motion is calming. It is a small act of order, of repair, in a life defined by entropy. As you sew, you hear fragments of conversation around you. Talk of a job heard about on the docks, a rumour of a fever in the next court over, the price of coal. It is the news of this tiny nation, spoken in low, grumbling tones. No one speaks of the wider world, of politics or empire. Those are forces of nature like the weather, immense, uncaring and irrelevant to the immediate calculus of rent and bread. But the evening is long, and the 3rd penny in your pocket begins to feel less like a seed and more like a weight. It represents a choice, security for tomorrow or solace for tonight. The fatigue in your bones is a deep, dull ache. But the memory of the matchwork's chemical smell, the echoing emptiness of the dock gate, the endless grey walking, it all sits in your mind like a cold, heavy stone. The sounds from the tavern down the lane grow louder, more inviting. You hear a burst of laughter, real and raw. You hear the clumsy, joyful crash of a piano. The promise of forgetfulness, however brief, is a powerful lure. You find yourself standing, your mending forgotten in your lap. The 3rd penny is hot in your hand. You nod to no one in particular and step back out into the twilight. The walk to the tavern is short. You push through the door, and the wall of sound and smell hits you like a physical blow. The air is thick with tobacco smoke, the sour tang of spilled beer, and the pungent juniper sting of cheap gin. The heat is oppressive, coming from a packed press of bodies and a roaring fire. A man is banging on an out-of-tune piano in the corner, and a few people are singing along to a bawdy song, their voices slurry and loud. You squeeze up to the rough wooden bar and place your penny down. The barman, Moving with the swift efficiency of a man who has seen every form of thirst, slides a clay mug of gin across the wet wood. It is clear, vicious-looking liquid. You take it to a quieter corner, if one exists, and drink. The first swallow is a fire that races down your throat and explodes in your stomach, sending an immediate false warmth radiating out to your fingertips. The second swallow dulls the sharp edges of the day. The third begins to blur them. The noise in the room, which was an assault, becomes a blanket, a buzzing cocoon that separates you from your own thoughts. You watch the faces around you, the red-faced man arguing amiably with his friend, the woman with two bright eyes trying to catch someone's gaze, the old sailor staring into his drink as if it contained a lost sea. Here, in this smoky, noisy, desperate carnival, everyone is equal in their escape. The gin does not bring joy, but it brings a pause, a merciful interruption in the narrative of struggle. For a penny you have bought an hour of being nobody, of feeling nothing beyond the warm, numb haze spreading from your core. It is the most expensive and the cheapest thing you will buy all day. When the mug is empty, the world tilts gently. The walk back to the lodging house is through a softer, quieter darkness. The cold doesn't bite as deeply. The weight of your body feels less. The third penny is gone, spent on this small chemical vacation from yourself. You've traded tomorrow's scant security for tonight's numbness. As you fumble your way back down into the cellar, the ropes groaning under your weight, you know it was a bad bargain. But as the familiar coughs and snores rise to meet you, and you close your eyes against the spinning dark, you also know, with a certainty that admits no argument, that you would make the same trade again. The descent into unconsciousness is quicker now, aided by the gin's false warmth. The sharp details of the day are sanded down into smooth, vague shapes. The last thing you feel is not a thought, but a sensation, the profound, enveloping relief of the fight being over, of the ledger, however disastrously balanced, being slammed shut for a few precious hours. The outside world, with its pumps and foremen and chemical dust, ceases to exist. There is only the deep, rolling tide of exhaustion, now buoyed by a cheap and burning spirit, pulling you down into the silent, depthless dark. The descent into the cellar is a surrender to gravity. The gin's warm haze, a fragile defence against the world, thins with each step down the ladder, burned away by the cellar's chill and the dense, waiting smell of sleep. Your rented ropes groan as you lower yourself onto them, a familiar, protesting sound. The darkness here is different from the tavern's smoky gloom. It is absolute, a velvet blackness so complete it feels like a substance against your skin. You lie back. The gin has done its work. The sharp, jagged edges of the day's memories are blurred. The foreman's dismissive glance, the weight of the match crates, the chemical sting in your throat, they are now distant, muffled echoes. In their place is a thick, cottony numbness, a blessed absence of feeling. But the body, ever honest, begins its final report. The ache in your lower back from the ropes is no longer a sharp pain, but a deep, constant pressure, as if the earth itself is pressing up against your spine. The burn in your palms from the phosphorus dust has faded to a vague, itchy tingle. Your feet, frozen and aching since the wait at the docks, now feel distant and heavy, like blocks of cold wood attached to the ends of your legs. You're aware of them not as parts of you, but as separate, suffering entities you carry. The gin's false warmth has retreated to a small glowing ember in your gut, and the cellar's chill seeps in to claim the rest of you. It starts at your extremities, a creeping cold that climbs up your ankles, your wrists, the back of your neck. You pull the thin, scratchy blanket over you, but its protection is a myth. The cold is inside the room, inside the very air you breathe. And then the sounds begin their shift. The daytime noise of the slum, the shouts, the carts, the commerce of survival has died. What replaces it is the night shift, the intimate symphony of the house. The man beside you, the one with the cough, is now asleep. His cough has softened from a racking convulsion to a wet rhythmic whisper on every other exhale. Asterisk. K. K. It is no longer an interruption. It has become the metronome of the room. From the shelf above, a woman snores, a soft whistling drone that rises and falls. In the far corner, someone is crying again, but the sobs are exhausted, hiccuping things that fade into the general murmur. Underneath it all is the constant scurrying industry of the rats in the walls, a dry, rustling counterpoint. You close your eyes, but the darkness behind your lids is no different from the darkness of the room. Your mind, unmoored from the gin and weary to its core, starts to drift. It does not form thoughts or stories. Instead, it replays sensations from the day, but stripped of context, like discarded pieces of a broken film. The shocking cold of the pump handle, the greasy feel of the fried slab in your hand, the way the dust in the matchworks caught the dim light, looking like 1,000 tiny malevolent stars. The smell of the tavern's gin, sharp and clean compared to the cellar's fug. These fragments float in the blackness, vivid but meaningless. They are the day's sensory debris being slowly cleared away. A new layer of discomfort announces itself, the lice. As your body relaxes into the cold, their movement becomes perceptible, not as individual bites, but as a general crawling unrest on your scalp, along your waistband, a phantom itching that seems to be everywhere at once. You have long since passed the point of fighting it. The itch is just another texture of existence here, like the damp or the smell. You shift slightly, and the ropes groan again. The cough clock ticks on. Asterisk. K. Time loses all meaning. It could be midnight, or an hour before dawn. The concept holds no relevance. There is only this eternal dark present, measured in coughs and snores and the skittering of rats. Your breathing begins to slow, to deepen, pulled into sync with the slower rhythms around you. The cold, which was an assault, becomes a simple fact, the medium in which you are suspended. The aches and itches begin to blend together, merging into a single, unified sensation of being alive in a suffering body. This is not peace, but it is cessation. The struggle to find work, to find food, to simply stay warm, it has all been deferred. The night is a truce. And then a subtle alchemy begins. The individual sounds of suffering, the cough, the snore, the cry, the scratch, start to lose their distinct edges. They don't stop, but they begin to blend, to harmonize in a way that is strange and unexpected. The cough's rhythm starts to match the pattern of the dripping water. The snore weaves around the rustling in the walls. Together they cease to be signs of distress and transform into a kind of music, a low, resonant drone that is the collective breath of the house. It is the sound of exhaustion itself given voice. This drone vibrates through the ropes, through the floor, into your bones. It becomes a lullaby, not in spite of its origins, but because of them. It is the most honest sound you know. Your own sense of self, already frayed by fatigue and gin, begins to dissolve at the edges. The boundary between your body and the man's body next to you softens. His heat is your heat. His cough is a vibration in your own chest. You're no longer John, or whatever name you once had. You're a point of awareness in a network of shared misery, a single thread in a worn, dirty blanket of sleep. The memories of the green field from childhood, the taste of clean bread, they are stories about someone else, a character from a book you half remember. They have no power here. Here there is only the drone, the cold, the weight. The drone grows deeper, richer. It seems to swell beyond the cellar, to absorb the distant sounds of the sleeping city. The last rumble of a late cart over cobbles a mile away, the faint call of a watchman, the sigh of the wind finding its way through a canyon of rooftops. It all becomes part of the same hum, the great weary exhalation of London itself. You're not just in a room anymore. You're inside the city's dreaming, restless body. The immense, crushing weight of its poverty, its industry, its countless struggling lives is no longer a thing to fight against. It is the sea you are floating in, and its very vastness is perversely comforting. Your own struggle is infinitesimally small. You're allowed to stop. Consciousness becomes a faint flickering candle in a vast, dark cathedral. The sensory input, the drone, the cold, the pressure of the ropes, doesn't stop. But your awareness of it as separate from yourself begins to wink out. The drone is not something you hear, it is what you are. The cold is not something you feel, it is your temperature. The final gentle release is not into sleep, but into a state of pure, undifferentiated being. There is no use to feel tired or cold or itchy. There is only the continuous slow pulse of the darkness, the deep resonant hum of survival on pause. The last flicker of you observes this dissolution with a sense of profound, wordless gratitude. Then it too is gone. And for you, the listener, who has followed this long grey day into its deepest heart of darkness, let this final unification be your guide. The struggle on the screen has not ended happily, but it has ended completely. The individual aches have merged into a universal hum. Let that hum now fill the safe, quiet space of your own room. Let the distant sounds of your modern night, the gentle hum of a refrigerator, the far-off whisper of a car, become part of this same peaceful drone. The story has given you its weight, its cold, its exhaustion. It has poured its tension into this soft sonic blanket. Now feel the contrast. Feel the profound softness of your own bed, not as a given, but as a miracle. Feel the clean warmth of your own blankets. Feel the absolute safety of your solitude. The desperate communion of the cellar has done its work. It has made your own isolation seem like a palace of peace. Breathe in time with the slow, remembered rhythm of the cough clock. Let your own breath be that deep, that slow. Let the imagined drone of the sleeping slum become a real, soothing white noise in your mind, washing away the clutter of your own day. The ledger is closed, the fight is over, the watch is ended. There is nothing more to witness, nothing more to endure, nothing more to become. You have journeyed all the way to the still, silent centre of exhaustion, and found there not horror, but a strange, profound rest. Now let that rest be yours. Carry the silence with you, and sleep. The profound silence that follows is not an absence, but a completion. The resonant drone, that collective exhalation of the house and the city beyond, has not faded. It has been internalized. It has moved from being a sound in your ears to a vibration in your marrow, a fundamental frequency to which your own weary systems have finally tuned themselves. The cold, the itch, the pressure of the ropes, they have not vanished. They have simply been catalogued, filed away as immutable facts of the universe no more remarkable than the force that pulls a stone downward. Resistance is a concept for the waking world. Here, in this deep trench of the night, there is only acceptance. Your breathing has become so shallow, so slow, it is nearly imperceptible. Each inhalation is a tiny, cool sip of the dank air. Each exhalation is a release so complete it feels like a minor death. The rhythm is no longer your own. It is a sub-rhythm of the greater house drone. You have become a passive component in a larger organism, a lung for the building itself. The boundary between your physical form and the sacking beneath you, between your warmth and the chill of the air, has dissolved entirely. You're a vaguely warm spot in the cold, dark cellar, a temporary configuration of matter that will, for a few hours, hold this particular shape. In this state of utter passivity, memory ceases to function linearly. The past does not unspool as a story. Instead, it erupts in isolated sensory flares across the dark canvas of your mind, disconnected from time or meaning. The bright metallic taste of the pump water flashes once, sharp and clear. The greasy print of a newspaper against your thumb, the particular angle of a grey cloud over a chimney pot at midday, the hollow thud of a match crate hitting the floor. These are not remembrances, they are physiological echoes, the final firing of nerves stimulated hours before. They are the mind's equivalent of the body's twitches as it settles into paralysis. Each one appears vivid and startling, and then is consumed by the waiting darkness, leaving no trace. A new sound gently insinuates itself into the drone, or perhaps it was always there, waiting for you to be quiet enough to hear it. It is the sound of the infrastructure, the faint, high-pressure hiss of gas passing through a pipe in a wall somewhere, servicing a street lamp in a wealthier street, the deep, almost subauditory groan of a water main under the street, a giant sigh. The skittering in the walls takes on a new dimension. You can hear the minute crunching as teeth find purchase on wood or plaster. This is the sound of the city's hidden life, the perpetual maintenance and decay that goes on unseen, the nervous system and digestive tract of the great beast. You're not just in a room, you're listening to the building's metabolism, the slow, secret processes that continue regardless of the human drama playing out within its skin. Time has not just slowed, it has changed states. It is no longer a river flowing from asterisk, then asterisk to asterisk, soon asterisk. It is a pool, deep and still. All moments coexist. The chill you feel is the chill of every winter night you have ever endured. The exhaustion in your limbs is the accumulated weariness of every laborious day. The faint residual warmth from the gin is the ghost of every small cheap comfort you have ever grasped. Past, present, and the unimaginable future all compressed into this single continuous asterisk, now asterisk of rest. There is no anticipation of dawn, no dread of tomorrow's search. There is only this profound, eternal present of not having to do. Your sense of self, already attenuated to a thin whisper, makes one final gentle shift. You're not a person with a name and a history. You're not even a body with aches and needs. You're a point of awareness, a single quiet witness floating in a sea of sensation. You're observing the cold. You're observing the drone. You're observing the last fitful sparks of memory. And then you begin to observe the observer. The asterisk that is watching begins to soften, to blur, to lose its point of view. The witness is dissolving into the witnessed. The listener is becoming the sound. The drone begins its final transformation. It sheds the last remnants of its origin as cough and snore and scratch. It smooths out into a pure, deep, harmonic tone. It is the sound of mass, of gravity, of silence itself held under pressure. It is profoundly neutral. It is not good or bad, peaceful or disturbing. It simply asterisk is asterisk. It is the auditory equivalent of the colour grey, of the feeling of weight, of the passage of time beyond measurement. This tone fills you. It becomes the only thing you are, the only thing that exists. And then, without fanfare, the last thread of connectivity snaps. The tone does not fade. Your awareness of it does not cease. Instead, the two merge completely. There is no longer asterisk to hear a asterisk sound asterisk. There is only a unified, seamless state of being, the deep, dark, resonant hum of existence at rest. Consciousness has not gone to sleep. It has returned to its source, like a drop of water falling into a still black ocean. The drop is not lost. It has simply rejoined the whole, indistinguishable and at peace. There is no dream. There is no thought. There is no self. There is only the long, slow, healing dark. And for you, the listener who has held vigil through this entire arduous journey, let this final wordless unity be your permission to release. The story has meticulously built a world of struggle, detail by sensory detail, brick by grimy brick. It has done so not to burden you, but to fully conjure the weight, so that the act of setting it down might feel all the more profound. The struggle is not just over. It has been absorbed, transmuted, and resolved into a fundamental, soothing frequency. That frequency is your signal. It is the sound of a battle completed, a vigil ended, a watch passed. Your own mind does not need to fight such battles. Your own body is not braced against such cold. The contrast is now absolute, and it is yours to feel. So feel it. Feel the immense, spacious silence of your own room as a gift. Feel the clean, soft support of your mattress as a luxury beyond the reach of kings. Feel the gentle, uncomplicated rhythm of your own breath as a miracle of peace. The narrative has poured its entire being into achieving this quiet. It has given you its exhaustion as the offering. Accept it. Let the imagined hum of that far-off sleeping cellar become the very engine of your own tranquility. Let it cancel out the faint, buzzing anxieties of your own day, the way a deep sound can cancel a higher pitch. There is nothing more to follow, no more sensations to track, no more decisions to make. The character you accompanied has reached the end of sentience, and in doing so, has cleared a space for you. That space is safe, it is warm, it is yours. Carry the quiet with you now, not as a memory of a story, but as the prevailing condition of your own being. Let your breath be the only movement. Let the darkness behind your eyelids be the only sight. Let the deep, resonant stillness be the only truth. And as you float in this perfect, borrowed peace, allow your own consciousness to gently, effortlessly, and completely dissolve. The long, seamless dark begins at its furthest edges to thin. This is not the approach of dawn, not yet. Dawn is still a theory, a rumour from the world of clocks and schedules. This is something more subtle, a slight lessening of the darkness's density, as if the immense weight of the night is being incrementally, infinitely slowly, lifted by a single thread. It is not a change you see, for your eyes are closed and sight is a forgotten language. It is a change you feel in the quality of the silence. The deep, resonant drone of collective existence softens its lowest note, by a degree so minute it is felt in the bones rather than heard by the ears. The pressure in the room lightens, as if the building itself is taking a preparatory shallower breath. In this liminal state, the body begins its most delicate work of reclamation. The numbness in your feet, which felt like foreign blocks of ice, begins a retreat. A faint, prickling sensation announces the return of blood to the capillaries, 1,000 tiny, painful stars igniting in the darkness of your flesh. It is not warmth, but the potential for warmth. In your hands, the phantom memory of the match crate's rough wood grain fades, replaced by a dull, throbbing awareness of your own pulse in your fingertips. The cold, which had been a total environment, begins to differentiate itself. You become aware that it is sharper on the side of your body exposed to the room's dank air, and slightly less so where your weight presses into the sacking. These are the first tentative surveys of a body preparing to belong to itself again. The soundscape undergoes a parallel refinement. The unified drone begins to fracture gently back into its component parts. The cough from the neighbouring ropes re-emerges as a distinct wet rhythm. The snore from above reasserts its irregular whistle. The skittering in the walls becomes purposeful movement again, not just ambient texture, but they do not return as the harsh intrusions they were hours before. They're familiar now, expected. They are the voices of your nocturnal community, each performing its part in the final movement of the night's symphony. Even the distant groaning water main and the hiss of the gas pipe seem to speak in softer tones, as if the city's infrastructure is also shifting from deep sleep into a state of drowsy preparation. A memory surfaces, but this one is different. It is not a sensory flash from yesterday. It is a simple, wordless image of a spoon scraping the last of the thin stew from a bowl. It holds no emotion, no satisfaction, no regret. It is merely a fact, a clean, geometric shape in the mind, the curve of the bowl, the arc of the spoon. It is the mind, now partially rested, beginning to sort the debris of consciousness into neutral, manageable forms. It is a sign that the machinery of thought is being oiled and tested, not for deep reflection, but for the basic procedural cognition that the coming day will demand. The chill in the air now carries a new signature. The damp mineral cold of the deep night is tinged with the faint sooty promise of the thousands of coal fires that will soon be lit across the metropolis. It is the smell of the city stirring in its sleep, a particulate greyness that precedes the light. Along with it comes the very first, almost imaginary sound of a single cartwheel on a distant cobbled street. A merchant starting his round far earlier than the law technically allowed, a sound of hustle that exists in a world parallel to your inertness. Inside you, a profound metabolic shift is nearing completion. The exhaustion, which had been a leaden passive weight, has been processed. It has not vanished, it has been converted. It is now a pool of potential energy, a deep, still reservoir of calm. The frantic animal anxiety of survival that fueled the day has been banked like a fire. What remains is a pristine, hollow quiet at your core. This is the true product of the night's labour. Not sleep, but the transformation of desperate fatigue into a state of passive readiness. Victorian physiologists might have spoken of nerve force being replenished. In the cellar, it is simply the feeling of being temporarily emptied of want. Your breathing, which had synced with the house drone, now begins to gently disentangle itself. It finds its own rhythm again, slightly deeper, slightly slower than the waking breath of the day. It is the breath of a body that is neither asleep nor awake, but perfectly suspended between worlds. With each inhalation, you draw in the cold, soot-tinged air. With each exhalation, you release the last microscopic vestiges of the matchwork's chemical scent, the grease of the fried slab, the gin's juniper ghost. You're being ventilated, cleansed by the simple, endless tide of air. The darkness behind your eyelids is no longer pure black. It is a deep, velvety grey, shot through with faint, swirling patterns that have no source. The mind's own internal light show, a gentle, autonomic activity. You watch them without intention, as one might watch clouds form and dissolve in a slow-motion sky. They are meaningless, beautiful, and utterly soothing. Then, the most significant change of all occurs, and it is entirely internal, the point of awareness. That tiny, quiet witness that had been floating in the sea of sensation makes a conscious, though wordless, choice. It does not turn towards the gathering grey light, the returning sounds, the prickling feet. It turns away. It chooses the deep. It lets go of the thinning thread of ambient sensation and allows itself to be pulled back, not into unconsciousness, but into a deeper, sweeter, more concentrated layer of rest. It is the final, voluntary surrender before dawn's involuntary summons. All the sounds, the cough, the snore, the skitter, the distant cart, they do not fade. They simply cease to be information. They become once more a blanket. But this time, a blanket not of shared misery, but of profound isolation. You're alone in the best possible way, alone inside the perfect self-contained fortress of your own restorative silence. The world outside, the world of the cellar, the alley, the city, ceases to have any claim on you. You have completed the circuit of its demands, and you have returned for this final, precious hour to a state of unassailable, pre-conscious peace. The grey light strengthens, but you do not see it. The house truly begins to stir with the first faint clatter of a pot upstairs, but you do not hear it. The cold sharpens its edge as the last of the night's residual warmth escapes, but you do not feel it. You've gone deeper than the night. You've found the silent, still centre beneath the struggle. You are for now absolutely and completely free. And for you, the listener, whose own night may be waning or just beginning, this is the final gift of the narrative. The journey has meticulously carved a path through noise, smell, touch and effort, all to lead to this, a pristine, empty quiet at the end of all sensation. The character has finally achieved a perfect escape. He is not waiting for the dawn. He is blissfully unaware of its approach. You can now claim this quiet for yourself. The path is clear. The struggles witnessed, the hunger, the cold, the labour, were the keys that unlock this profound stillness. Having shouldered their weight, even in imagination, you have earned the right to set them down. Feel the incredible lightness of their absence. The constricting alleyways are gone. The crowded room is gone. The acid taste of fear and want is gone. All that remains in the space they occupied is a vast, welcoming silence. It is a silence you can step into. Let your own awareness make that same gentle, turning away choice. Turn away from the faint concerns of your own tomorrow. Turn away from the gentle hum of your own room. Turn inward, toward your own deep, still centre. There is nothing to prepare for, nothing to remember, nothing to solve. There is only this boundless, tranquil void offered to you across time by a soul who, for a few hours, has managed to leave all burdens behind. Step into it. Let it hold you. And as you are held, feel the last distinction between listener and story, between present and past, between you and the quiet, gently dissolve into peace, into stillness, into the deepest, most restorative sleep. The final retreat from the common room's hearth feels like the true end of the day. That circle of flickering light and shared wordless company was the last outpost of society. Paying your penny and turning back towards the cellar stairs is an act of leaving the world of even minimal communion and re-entering the realm of pure solitary endurance. The warmth from the fire and the weak tea lingers on your front while your back is already cold, anticipating the dank air below. Each step down the ladder is a step into a colder stratum, the temperature dropping noticeably as you descend into the earth. The smell changes too, from the smoke and food smells above to the older, more fundamental odours of mould, damp stone and sleeping humanity. Your entered space on the ropes is as you left it, an impression in the sacking already grown cold. The tallow dip in the far corner is a dying ember of light, its flame guttering so low it seems to be drowning in its own molten fat. The shadows it casts are long and trembling, making the still forms of the other sleepers look like shrouded hillocks in a strange dark landscape. You navigate by memory and faint outline, stepping over a leg, avoiding a prone form, until your hands find the familiar rough texture of your own sacking. You sit, then slowly lie back. The ropes protest with the same series of groans, a language that speaks only of weight and strain. The blanket you pull over you is stiff and damp at the edges, smelling of cellar and old wool. Now, the final watch begins. This is not the passive surrender of earlier, but a conscious, weary holding of a fragile perimeter. The body is a territory under siege, and the mind is its tired sentry. The first assault is always auditory. The sounds you'd grown accustomed to in the common room, the low talk, the crackle of the fire, are gone. Here the sounds are raw, intimate, and relentless. The man 2 spaces over is not just coughing. You can hear the liquid rattle deep in his chest, the desperate wheezing intake of breath that follows each paroxysm. It is no longer a background rhythm, but a detailed, alarming physical process happening a few feet away. A woman on the far side whimpers in her sleep, a high, thin sound of distress that comes and goes. Someone else grinds their teeth, a dry, grating scrape that sets your own jaw on edge. And beneath it, always, the scratching. Not just the rats now, but the sound of fingernails on cloth, on skin, as sleepers subconsciously fight the lice. You close your eyes against the dim, dancing shadows, but this only sharpens the hearing. The sounds begin to layer, to build upon one another. The cough provides a bass rhythm. The whimper becomes an erratic melody. The grinding teeth a percussion. The scratching is the constant, shimmering hi-hat of the ensemble. For a long time you simply listen, your mind tracing each source, identifying it, a futile exercise in cataloguing misery. This is the last resistance. The mind's attempt to impose order, to separate self from the chaotic symphony of other. The next wave is tactile. The cold, which you kept partially at bay near the hearth, now launches its full offensive. It seeps up from the stone floor beneath the boards. It drifts down from the clammy ceiling. It finds the gaps in your clothing, the space between the blanket and the sacking, the exposed skin of your neck and ankles. It is a patient, pervasive cold that promises to leach all warmth from you by dawn. Concurrently, the lice begin their nightly feast in earnest. The itching is no longer a general awareness, but a series of precise, maddening points of contact, a sharp pinch behind the knee, a crawling sensation across the scalp, a persistent irritation along the waistband. You shift, you twitch a muscle, but it only moves the torment to a new location. The body is a map, and they are exploring every inch of it. In this state of heightened defensive awareness, the memories try to return, not as flashes, but as full sensory echoes with emotional weight. The foreman's dismissive face at the dock gate, not just as an image, but with the sinking feeling in your gut that accompanied it. The weight of the match crate in your arms, not just as a memory of weight, but with the renewed ache in your shoulders. The taste of the gin, not just as a flavour, but with the fleeting, foolish warmth it promised. These are no longer neutral fragments. They are the emotional receipts of the day, presented for review in the dark. And the review is bleak, a ledger of rejection, bodily strain, and spent pennies. The mind, playing sentry, starts to tally the accounts, and the sum is despair. This is the critical juncture, the moment before the final surrender. The sentry is tired, the assaults are continuous, the territory, your own peace, is impossible to hold, and so a strange strategic retreat begins. You do not fight the sounds, you start to listen asterisk through asterisk them. The cough is no longer a sign of a sick man, but becomes a wind through a hollow reed. The whimper becomes the cry of a distant seabird. The grinding teeth become pebbles tumbling in a slow stream. This is an act of imaginative alchemy, born of utter exhaustion. You are translating the language of human suffering into the language of the natural, or at least the non-human, world. It is a desperate, beautiful lie that the mind tells itself to survive. The body follows suit. The cold is not an enemy to be fought, but a condition to be observed, like the depth of a lake you're floating in. The itching is not an attack, but a weather pattern on the landscape of your skin, a swarm of tiny, predictable storms. You stop twitching, you stop shivering. You let the sensations happen, but you withdraw the investment of panic from them. You let the territory be occupied while you, the consciousness, retreat to the innermost citadel. Inside that citadel there is only your breath. You focus on it with all the will you have left. The cool in, the warmer out, the slight pause between. You match its rhythm not to the cough or the snore, but to an imagined, slower, grander rhythm. The tide on a shore you've never seen, the swell of a vast, dark ocean. The external sounds, now translated and neutralized, begin to attach themselves to this new internal rhythm. They become part of its texture. The cough is a wave crashing. The scratching is the receding hiss of foam. The distant final clang of a shutter from upstairs is a lone bell buoy. The alchemy deepens, moving from translation to integration. The separate sounds lose their individual identities completely. They blend into a single, resonant and oddly harmonious asterisk. Asterisk, hum, asterisk, asterisk. It is the sound of the building breathing. It is the sound of the hundred sleeping, coughing, dreaming souls within it, vibrating at a shared low frequency. It is the sound of the very bricks and mortar saturated with decades of soot and sorrow, releasing a slow sonic sigh. This hum is not pleasant, but it is immense, stable, and all-encompassing. It is the sound of the system itself, the system of poverty, of overcrowding, of urban survival. And in its vast impersonal monotony, there is a perverse kind of peace. You're not a person suffering. You're a note in a chord of shared exhaustion. The immense weight of your individual struggle is subsumed into the collective burden, and in that sharing it becomes lighter. Now, the final dissolution. The you that is listening to the hum begins to soften at the edges. The boundary between the sound outside and the awareness inside starts to blur. The hum is not outside you, it is in the room. Then it is in your head. Then you're in the hum. The sentry stands down. The citadel doors are opened. The consciousness stops defending its separateness and allows itself to be absorbed into the ambient noise of existence. Thought ceases, not with a bang but with a smooth, seamless fade. The memories stop their parade. The accounting stops. There is no past, no future, no John, no hunger, no cold. There is only the continuous dark resonant vibration of being. The body is still there on the ropes, but it is a distant fact, a ship you have quietly abandoned in the night. You are the ocean now, deep, dark, moving with a slow, inevitable pulse, untroubled by the storms on the surface. The grey light of dawn will come. It will touch the grimy window high on the wall. It will coax the cough back into a racking spasm, turn the hum back into a chorus of distinct complaints, and call the sentry back to its dreadful post. But that is for the next world, the world of daylight and pennies. For now, for this long, precious and hard-won stretch of time, there is only the deep, welcoming, silent heart of the hum. And you are gone.